Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for listening. We're going to jump right in here, recapping what was a delayed National Signing Day celebration by the SMU coaching staff on Wednesday. Got to hear from Rhett Lashlee, Casey Woods, Scott Simons, every assistant coach, including new linebackers coach and run game coordinator, Maurice Crum. So a good day on the hilltop, running down what is over 30 additions to the SMU program, many of which are already on campus from the transfer ranks, some high school players who are already enrolled, and then we'll get to see the rest of them arrive in the summer in time for workouts with Sean Griswold and his strength staff. A couple key takeaways for me. I think you look at Keldrick Luster finally getting to hear the coaching staff talk about him and how they went through the process to find him and bring him on board. And Johnny Brewer spoke a lot about it when talking about kind of his demeanor and his ability to go into different programs and lead and learn the offense and be productive in two different and very different, I'll add, styles of offense when he was in the Frisco area playing his junior season, and then goes to McKinney for 1 year and plays in a very pro style attack. A lot of under center, a lot of power eye type of stuff. They got him into the gun a little bit more as the year unfolded, but he was still productive. And one thing that really stuck out to me is when they're evaluating Keldrick Luster and how he would fit, they took away that size element. Now, he's about 5'10", 5'11", but he's built kind of like a running back. And Johnny Brewer was talking about how that will change the offense a little bit when they do get him on campus this summer. And then, start developing him for his college career. The amount of attention he'll probably need to take from a defense in terms of being able to run the football is something that stuck out to me. And I saw Keldrick Luster play this fall, and he can take off and run. But a lot of those were kind of scramble opportunities for him to extend plays and take off down the field. He's a big guy. He's got big, thick legs. Like I said, kind of built like a running back. But I thought it was interesting just in terms of how they go about recruiting quarterbacks each cycle and how different the ones that they have on the offense now are. Rhett Lashlee recruited Preston Stone, a highly touted passer who's got the ability to run. You've got Kevin Henry Jennings on the roster, somebody that, again, kind of has that ability to run, but certainly kind of has that live arm, that very, just the ball just jumps off his hand at such a high level. At least, watching him, he can kind of be viewed as a passer who can run as well. Then you get to Keldrick Luster. He can run the football and certainly does have the arm to play at the high level. They did touch on Alex Padilla, the Iowa transfer quarterback that they brought in, and kind of what he's going to bring as far as a veteran, voice in the room. Rhett Lashlee talked about it, saying, hey, at Miami, quarterbacks got hurt. This past year at SMU, quarterbacks got hurt. They wanted a little bit more insurance on that front so that they didn't have to get, quite frankly, to Keldrick Luster while he was trying to redshirt this upcoming season. So a very good fit there in Alex Padilla, who's somebody who's going to be kind of like Keldrick Luster, in for a little bit of a change from his prior scheme running that Iowa archaic offense. You look at the skill position player, and the one that jumps out on the screen, and they talked about the transfers and the high school prospects, but the one that jumps off at the screen, and Rhett Lashlee talked about him during the presentation as well as afterwards. I talked about him, and to get Jamarian Carroll out of Wichita Falls area, somebody who had some big programs pushing for him late. He finishes as a 4-star and on 3, and they just felt like evaluating him. He sees the progression of SMU receivers going to the league, and he sees, well, I could be the next one. And they think he's got that talent. When Rhett Lashlee was breaking down his film, of course, they showed the one where Jamarian did a 360 spin in the air while jumping over a defender, and called it one of the plays of the year in high school football. And no question about that, with just the athleticism it took to do that, and then, of course, score. So Jamarian Carroll is somebody that jumps out at me as far as somebody they're really high on. But then you get to listen to Rob Likens talk about Keyshawn Smith. And a really cool backstory was that Rob Likens said, when he got there, he felt like he was very hard on Keyshawn Smith. And one of the hurdles he thought they were going to have to overcome with him was, well, I was so hard on him, he might not want to come and play for me again. But Keyshawn Smith really wanted to come in and be, again, kind of that next guy in line at the wide receiver position for SMU, get back into an offense that, helped him be productive early in his career. And, he's just excited to get that opportunity. And some of the things they showed on him and Romello Brinson, who had one of the highlight reel catches of the presentation. And certainly when he did it that college football season, both of those guys, they feel like getting them in to this offense back under Rob Likens was really important. And those guys can then potentially flourish in this offense. Rhett Lashlee added that Jordan Curley or Rob Likens or somebody added that Jordan Curley's already gained 10 pounds in the offseason program. So that's a good sign when it comes to how they're going to, lean on these guys. I mean, Jordan Curley's been banged up. Jake Bailey's been banged up. These guys need to stay healthy, and to see that, to hear that little tidbit, I thought was important. And no one's ever questioned Jordan Curley's work ethic. I mean, he's somebody that, early on in his career, I saw working in the indoor practice facility with the lights off, just catching balls from the jugs machine and working with the quarterback. So that wide receiver room, I came away from the signing day celebration, is what they called it, feeling a lot better about this wide receiver position. You have so many weapons that they now have on the roster, and they're looking for somebody to have that Rashee Rice type of season. There's no doubt about that, and that's going to be hard to beat. But they do have guys that they feel like can get there in terms of speed and playmaking ability. Jordan Curley, Jake Bailey, Keyshawn Smith, Romello Brinson added to the fold. I just feel like coming out of that meeting with the staff, I think they're a little bit higher on the wide receiver room, maybe than even I am. Keenan Hall spoke a good bit about the running back position with Jalen Knighton. And Jalen Knighton, first of all, is going to bring something that SMU hasn't really had in quite some time from the running back room, which is a receiving option, one that you can really dump it off and he's going to go pick up yards after catch. I believe both clips that Rhett Lashlee showed were of Keyshawn Smith catching the football and making plays with it after the catch. Funny enough, I think it was a Ja'Kai Clark clip that ended up being a Jalen Knighton run, a big gain against Florida State. So he quipped that, hey, he can run the football. He can make big plays when handed the football as well. But I think Jalen Knighton's ability to catch the football is something that this offense desperately is needed. It just makes them defend a little bit more of the field and a little bit more, different schematic avenues that SMU can get the ball in playmakers' hands. And, it's like an extended screen, swing pass, just dump it off to Jalen Knighton and he's going to go. Keenan Hall also mentioned LJ Johnson has really kind of surprised, and he's a bigger back. He is most certainly, if you're, naming, Jalen Knighton Lightning, you'd go LJ Johnson Thunder. Well, one thing that caught his eye is the impressive athleticism and speed that he's kind of brought in spring workouts so far. So I think that is something that also caught my eye. Just, sometimes you get guys on campus and you think they're one thing. Well, maybe he's got a little bit more speed than even SMU thought when they scouted him and brought him back in as a transfer addition from Texas A&M, a very highly touted and productive high school back. But that was a big piece for me. You look at the tight end room, and it's kind of fairly straightforward, I think. Trip Reardon is a big body who's going to develop into a blocking tight end with the ability to, catch some passes. You've got Lonnie Johnson, who's a big body. Somebody that's going to add some weight to be able to play along the line of scrimmage. That was something Casey Woods noted, and he's here in January doing that. And then you'll add Adam Moore over the summer, who's got that big physical body, and the SMU coaching staff said that he's already bigger than what RJ Maryland was coming in as a freshman last year. So that's a good sign. Jackson Lavender and Randy Reese, those two guys are going to factor in special teams. Maybe not as true freshmen. SMU does have some options there, but when you look at their highlights that they dished out there, both involved kick returns and or punt returns for touchdowns. So I think with those two guys, their ability to make plays in special teams is something that SMU, coveted when they recruited them. Obviously, both are a little bit more slot type players. So they're going to have a little bit of not a tough time, but a longer road, in my opinion, to getting on the field, just because you have Jake Bailey, you have Roger Daniels coming back. Dylan Goffney played a little bit of slot, although he might be out for the spring. We'll see how his recovery is going from that foot. We'll find out on March 2nd, though, when SMU opens spring practice. I guess we'll find out March 4th. That's our first media availability. But March 2nd is the first day of spring practice. Dylan Goffney is somebody that if he's back, that'll obviously help him get some extra work in. But he is, I believe he's out of the boot. I could be wrong on that. But those are kind of some of the options at slot. So those two guys, Jackson Lavender and Randy Reese, can factor in on special teams and in the return game. Maybe that takes a little bit of the load off of a Jordan Curley or a Jake Bailey or whoever else they want to put back there as far as kick returners go. Brian Massey returned kicks, obviously. So they've got some options now. We're going to table defensive line at some point because on Friday, that's our next position preview. So I talked a lot about those guys. But then you get to the offensive line. That is a group that added 7 new transfers or 7 new additions. Sean Scott out of the high school ranks, Reagan Gill out of the high school ranks, Alex Woods out of the high school ranks. And then you get to the transfers with Logan Parr and Ja'Kai Clark from Texas and Miami, respectively, who will be here this summer. Both provide position versatility. That was the big thing the SMU staff hammered home. A quick note on Ja'Kai Clark. Garen Justice said that when they got there, because Ja'Kai Clark was already there, he was going to be somebody that they told they were going to redshirt. He played right away as a true freshman. They wanted him to develop more and felt like he needed a redshirt year. Well, injuries happen, and there was Ja'Kai Clark once again starting for the Miami Hurricanes. So that's a position group that SMU felt like when injuries can kind of stack up, they need as much depth as they could possibly put together, and they feel like they did that in a big way. I can tell you, Hiron White, his size, Scott Natty, the director of recruiting for SMU or on-campus recruiting, I forget his title exactly, but he quipped that if everybody, if there's a storm warning or severe thunderstorm, everybody's going to huddle under him. That's how big of a guy he is. And he's played a lot of football at Missouri, came back, to the Dallas area to play nearby DeSoto, where he's from, and he's healthy now. He's expected to factor in right away at right tackle. And then they turn on the clips of PJ Williams, the former top 100 prospect who went to Texas A&M. Obviously, SMU gets him out of the transfer portal, and his highlight tapes, I forgot how good he was coming out of Dickinson High School. Somebody that really, really impressed a lot of people with his physicality. One thing that I think Rhett Lashlee said, he said, we're going to apologize in advance. He'll probably get us one 15-yarder after the whistle, at least potentially next season if he is in the starting lineup or playing a lot, because he likes to finish his blocks. So you flip over to the defensive side of the ball, and Ahmad Walker and Scott Simons really raved about him. And honestly, when he spoke with us, I asked, how's Alex Kilgore and how's Ahmad, adjusting? He's quite frankly kind of said, I'm not too worried about Ahmad Walker. I know what he's going to bring to the table. I know the type of guy he is. And on Alex Kilgore's side of things, his competitiveness has really stuck out to the SMU staff. He was going against an older player in I guess some sort of drill, and won that rep. He's somebody that has some size, some athleticism. Rhett Lashlee showed a play where he took the ball as a running back and scored a touchdown. They're really high on him, and he is not far off from being in that 2 deep when it's all said and done, going into fall camp, and I would say leaving spring ball, quite frankly, with just how that group is positionally with the depth. Brandon Miazzano, they highlighted what we know. He's played quarterback. He's played a little bit of tight end. He's played linebacker. He's a really physical football player. He had one of the big hits of the highlight reel session that Rhett Lashlee did. And then you get into this defensive back room, which is just pretty wild. What they brought in. Obviously, there was a lot of people raving about Jalen Davis Robinson, Smoke, as they call him. with his speed and what he's going to bring to the table. He's got a physicality that they showed on tape as well, that they're really hoping to harness and get out there. But don't sleep on AJ Davis. And I say that because Rhett Lashlee said it. Scott Simons said it. Ricky Hunley said it. There were a few guys that, as they were kind of breaking down some of these new additions, they highlighted, guys here and there that are coming back and are looking like they're going to have a chance to, have something to say about these position battles that when you bring in this many transfers, you kind of think, oh, maybe it's just going to go to that guy. Well, that's not necessarily how it's trending right now. Chris Meganson is another guy that SMU is very high on. He's got familiarity with the scheme that Scott Simons is going to run. So that was a big pickup. Jonathan McGill was somebody that Rhett Lashlee said, if we played him at slot receiver, he'd probably be able to be productive. He's just a flat out football player. He apologized for being a little corny with it, but it's true. And that dates back to high school with Jonathan McGill, and a guy that SMU had a commitment from. He ends up going to Stanford, goes on to be a captain, and can play all three safety positions is what Rhett Lashlee highlighted. So Jonathan McGill is another one that stood out with what he's going to bring to the table. That you get into Charles Woods with his talent. And if any of you guys follow Joe Hoyt on Twitter, when Joe tweeted that Max Duggan interception that was picked off by Charles Woods back in 2021 before the coaching staff got there, that was, once again, the clip that Rhett Lashlee showed of Charles Woods. So, he does have that ability to be a really high-level lockdown corner, which SMU so desperately needs. But I thought it was funny that, that was the clip that they ended up using. Charles Woods got tackled, I think, at like the 20 or something, and Rhett Lashlee said, we're going to need him to score that next year in that matchup against TCU when they go over to Fort Worth. But Charles Woods was a big pickup, and, they highlighted that in the best way that got the room going a little bit on that front. They weren't able to talk about Lamondrick Spencer. Obviously, he hasn't signed officially yet. He signed paperwork that kind of locks him in, but he's got to, he's continuing down the path of getting his academics ready to go. But then you get into CJ Sanders, another guy that Rhett Lashlee, touted as somebody who can just come in and play multiple positions, play wherever they want him to, and wherever he feels like he can make an impact. And what they saw from him at Fresno State was somebody that can do just that, playing nickel, playing corner. They like his size and length a little bit more even than he's listed. He's listed about 5'10", 5'11", I believe, on the Fresno State roster. So he's another versatile piece. I think the big thing, and you look at the offensive line, you look at some of the skill guys on both sides of the ball, they added a lot of versatility. When things go wrong and you maybe pick up an injury here or there, they'll have some guys that waiting in the wings that can step in right away. They showcased that with Logan Parr. He played center, he played guard. Kai Clark, same story. Quick note on the defensive line, they highlighted that with Elijah Roberts, somebody that could end up sliding inside a little bit more. And the same goes for the high school signees, Day Wimberly and Braden Flowers, both who had some really nice highlights out there. Braden Flowers primarily on the offensive side of the ball, as he was a real versatile piece for San Antonio Central Catholic. And then they signed Kevin Allen, who's obviously coming off a monster senior season. So, I feel like when you look at this group and what they put together, I feel like they really were energized about it. The coaching staff did a roundtable, and if you didn't get a chance to watch it, go to our YouTube channel. We recorded it all. It's under the live tab. Please hit us with a subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're over 600 subscribers now. Let's keep it rolling towards 1,000. But you can hear just how energized this coaching staff is in terms of the guys they brought in, which I think is always fun. And even you look at Maurice Crum, who we got to get to know for the first time during all of this since he had been hired. He's very high on Alex Kilgore. He's very high on Ahmad Walker and Brandon Miyazono, and has gotten to know those guys as far as what they're going to bring to the table as prospects. But obviously he's having to learn them a little bit as far as him coming in as their new position coach with Scott Simons moving back to safety. But really well-spoken guy. Maurice Crum, Rhett Lashlee called him low-key, very confident. That really stuck out to me. Very smooth up there with the microphone in his hand, and seemed to mesh really well with some of the coaches up there as well. Now that he's in SMU gear, so Kyle Cooper is moving back to coach a little bit of safeties with Scott Simons after spending last year with the outside linebackers. He'll kind of coach some of the nickel spot along with Scott Simons, but his main title he now holds is special teams coordinator. A big move as Craig Niver moved on to be the defensive coordinator at Coastal Carolina after he handled the safeties and special teams last year. So Rhett Lashlee is going to come out with a couple more tweaks to the staff, but he said the staff's back, the staff's in place, and some titles will tweak. That's really all, leaving the structure the same. So wanted to pass along some of the takeaways from that recruiting luncheon. I did get to talk to Rhett Lashlee after, along with the rest of the media. And I asked him a lot about the momentum, because they weren't talking about the Pac-12, around the program. And he just said, look, this alignment between the football program and the university just keeps getting better and better. And he said it's the best it's been. And he hopes and thinks it will keep getting better. You know, President Turner, Rick Hart, the donors that are behind the program, building the $100+ million end zone facility that continues to be worked on in that south end zone is a prime example of that. You know, he highlighted, and I thought this was, you know, without saying it, this was about as best as he could say it, how the administration has worked so hard behind the scenes to make sure SMU football has the most resources, be in the best position it can to compete at the highest level. So without saying it, that was the best way he could talk about the buzz around SMU football without it directly pertaining to the Pac-12. So, you know, I think the biggest thing looking forward for Rhett Lashlee and this staff that they kind of touched on is good players want to play with good players. So as they assembled this roster, you look at the 2024 class they've got with their two commitments with Tyler Aronson and Wildman Colley. This is a group that can be, you know, that cornerstone to another strong recruiting class. And Rhett Lashlee said, look, the expectations are raised. We brought in a bunch of really good players on paper and what we think are really good players, which is what matters in their evaluations. And he said, now we got to go out and do it. You know, that's what people expect. When you bring in a class that is as highly touted as this, you've got to go out and produce. And that was his main point when it comes to the expectations around the program. Now that this recruiting class is put together, they're going to still be active and look for some guys late. We saw an offer go out at linebacker to Darren Allman from Angelo State, a linebacker that was really productive the last 2 years and is entering his final year of college eligibility. He's in the transfer portal. He's going to take a visit, he told me, in March. So keep on the lookout for that. But linebacker was a piece that they really wanted to address, and they will see what else pops up into the portal, maybe a tight end, maybe a safety. We'll kind of keep an eye out for all of that. So with that, guys, there are full interviews with Rhett Lashlee, Casey Wood, Scott Simons, as well as the full presentation from the coaching staff, all on the Pony Express YouTube channel. Please spread the word about the channel. Share the link with your friends. We just need them to subscribe. It takes 2 seconds. So appreciate all you guys who have done that. Also, a couple weeks away from spring football, subscribe to ontheponyexpress.com. $10 a month gets you all the inside you need into spring ball. It is fairly closed, I'll add, so you might want to do that. You never know what nuggets will drop on the site. So appreciate you guys listening to this edition of the podcast. I'm off to go catch SMU and Houston play basketball. We will catch you guys next week after our Friday spring position preview, of course, with the defensive line. We'll catch you next week with another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. Thanks for listening. Have a good weekend, everyone.